This is AWOL podcast, Absent with Our Lord. We have Mackenzie, Corey, Aaron Hall, Cassie sitting around the table. Biggest group we've had yet here in the podcast studio. Get this started. I'd like to introduce Mr. Aaron Hall, buddy of mine. I've spoke about him here on the podcast, known him for, Aaron, what would you say now? When did you start out there?
Well, I started in 2005.
So
we really met like 2008, I guess, into 2007.
Yeah,
Well, that was whenever we got the kicked off of our normal jobs after the economy collapsed. So that was 2008-ish.
Call that the downturn of 2008, the recession. I remember that. That was a tough time. Worked for a good company, kept us employed, kept us busy. So 8 to my math, if I add 2, carry the 1, about, was that 36 years?
Yeah, 36.
So anyway, it's been several years, plus 12 years or so. 15 years when I first met him, young man, riding a Harley, carefree, still a young man, not a Harley. He's got some different baggage in life now. Keep him occupied. You want to jump in, tell us about that? Something that we wanted to talk to you specifically about in this podcast, something that's inspired us, kind of the same content, same media we're putting out. You started a program, started going Facebook Live one time, and I remember calling it Ruck to Work. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that got you started?
Well, first off, I probably need to take a minute first to thank you guys for what you're doing with this. I've been behind it from the start for sure, but I've not been nearly as supportive as I wanted to be. No excuses. I haven't been as supportive as I wanted to be, but aside from that, also, for that friendship, whenever we got put like 2 desks down from each other, and that was really the first time I'd ever met you. And I was, 22, 23 at the time, but you took me in right off the bat. Like, it was immediately, and I'm not over exaggerating that. It was immediate that I knew there was something special, there was something different, and I felt like it was a pretty quick, building of a relationship. And then, Cassie and you welcoming me into the family pretty much immediately. There's always been a love and appreciation, and I've always treasured that, so thank you. And then Mackenzie and Corey, getting to know them, same thing, there's something about you guys, your family, the environment, the love of God is that main thing that drives that, I know, but just the embrace, right from the start from all you guys. So,
well, you're welcome. And a lot of people, if you watch the YouTube channel, listen to some of the podcasts, the AWOL theme was to take something, and we've got some backlash. Again, I don't read the comments like Mackenzie does about the name being negative, but when God had given me that, when we were kicking around the things, the absent without leave, or the podcast known Absent with Our Lord, very synonymous. That's what, when we get out there doing the things we do, outdoors, fishing, whatever, the genres we've talked about, it all comes back to the community, the walk with God, the faith, the atmosphere, the best things I have to life and offer through Christ, those kind of things. Why? Because I can't offer much money. I can't, the good book says, silver and gold have I none, but such as I have, that's all I have to offer. And I'm blessed to be able to offer that. And that's the purpose of that. But you were what we called the AWOL OG. You and I have been duck hunting. I remember our first duck hunt together. I think somebody got wet, not me.
That's actually on my list of things.
Okay, well, jump in.
We can tell that story and then get to the stuff later.
Actually, again, it goes with what we were talking about. You'll hear on previous podcasts, earlier podcasts, however Mackenzie chooses to see fit to launch it. But we're talking about servitude, and I had a obligation. I was acting as a elf or Santa in a work program. I had volunteered to do that to bring good cheer, goodwill. But before that, I wanted to get into duck hunting. So I had a time we were supposed to meet and do this work gig, and we ended up going to a local state wildlife area, conservation area, Mermet. Have a buddy that works there now. We went with him. We all decided to go out. I didn't have any waiters, knew we were on a crunch timeline. We were out, I think, were we picking up decoys because I had to leave? Yeah,
we
getting
were fixing to head out.
Getting ready to pick up decoys, and lo and behold, we leaned in the boat one direction, which I wasn't in the boat. It was two people, both went after the same decoy on a small john boat, and before you know it, they end up in the drink, and it was frigid. It was cold.
Boat, yeah, completely under. Like I ended up underneath the boat, like standing up, pushing it up over the top. Thankfully, it wasn't too deep, but
and I mean, it was traumatic. Any waterfowl hunter, anybody out there knows. I'm standing in the blind. I'm in street clothes, basically trying to get in a hunt, and you see two buddies of yours flip the boat, and then you're like, oh, that sucks. And then, all right, where are they at? And then that little bit of a panic sets in, like, oh, are they all right? Are they okay? And you know, it could be bad. That's the way a lot of accidents happen out there. Boats take on water. If you're familiar with that, you don't just pick it up and keep going. It's 1,000-pound object or plus that starts sinking onto you. You can get trapped, and you're in waders that fill up with water. It's a bad deal. So emotions were high. Tempers may have flared a little bit, but I ended up ultimately just having to call and work saying, I'm not making it. We're not going to be there. You're going to have to get a different Santa Claus for that.
Elf duty.
Yeah, I missed my elf duty, but I don't even remember. Did we have that good of a hunt?
No, I don't think so.
That happens
they
too.
They rarely are.
Sometimes that definitely happens. So, yeah, it's our honor, our pleasure, again, to call you friend, have you on the podcast for sure. I've watched his kids grow up. I've watched him. I wasn't in his married life and his wedding, but I saw the pictures, and it looked like a lot of fun. Looked good. They floated around work for a while. They still probably got them, but
yeah, those are some good ones. That was about 100 pounds heavier than I was now. So
wedding cake's delicious. So anyway, we'll jump right into this podcast. Kind of tell us what's on your mind. If you could get into, we don't have a order, if a rhyme or reason, but we definitely want to talk about the Ruck to Work, some of your early faith building or ministry that you felt called to do it that got you started, and then even some of the fitness aspect, the podcast. Go ahead and Phil. Anytime you mention one on your Ruck to Work, I'm not a podcast guy, but I try to, if you call one out, go find that specific episode, listen to it. The T-Bone was awesome. Definitely worth listening to. But I try to always do that because you have a lot more experience to content, things like that. I can't even sometimes keep my Apple iPod app. I don't even know where it's at on my phone all the time, but I'm getting better at it. So if you would, jump on into it and get us going.
Well, I think we'll start from, I want to give at least part of my testimony. I don't know how you guys want to do this, but what God has done for me is I feel like that's kind of my, that's the biggest thing I have. That's, my experiences with God, my testimony that he gave me is, I don't want to say superpower necessarily, but I think that's one of the best things I have to offer anywhere. And just to kind of give a background for some of these other things, because that kind of, sets the stage somewhat for where I am now, because the Aaron Hall that's sitting here today is not the Aaron Hall that you met in 2008.
Amen.
It's not the Aaron Hall that existed back then. I mean, I really believe and I know in my heart there's no doubt that I'm not the same person that I used to be. I grew up in church. That was the first place Mom and Dad took me. But and I had a good experience, great childhood. It couldn't have been better. Pretty much picture perfect. Mom and Dad together, growing up in church, great family, grandparents, the whole nine. And I was active in church growing up. I was a really good kid. I worked in the church, played instruments and all of that. And up until my senior year, I guess, I was pretty well on the straight and narrow, and I found alcohol.
Yeah.
It's like October of my senior year of high school, first time I ever tried any of that, and it was kind of love at first drink almost, not quite, maybe love it the second time I tried to get into it. So, and it was just downhill from there, and it just, the biggest thing is just the selfishness of all that time spent, drinking. I had, there were good times. You can have fun, out in the world doing that kind of stuff. But I met my wife. I graduated in 2004, so it started around then. Right shortly after that, I met Jen at a church function, and we started dating. And I would go through this whole time, especially early on, I would go through spurts of not drinking. I knew it wasn't right, so it was always a battle for me. It's like I enjoyed this so much, because when I would get that alcohol in my system, the chemicals in my brain, I liked that experience and that feeling, but I knew, I had the Holy Ghost, I knew what was right and wrong, and not necessarily alcohol itself, but I was drinking to get drunk. I wasn't, doing a lot of wild stuff with the guys and whatnot. But so it was always a battle back and forth, and I would try to control it, and I'd go back because Jen, she was, raised in church, at least for most of her childhood. And I wanted to be, because that was my ultimate goal the whole time. I wanted to be a man of, a godly man. I wanted to stay on the straight and narrow there. I wanted to be a good husband. I wanted to be a good father and all these things. So it was really a hard internal battle that I was fighting then. But we're dating. There's a lot of crazy stories from that time. So I'll kind of give you guys a slightly quicker version. We got married in 2007. I'll tell this story. I guess it was a year and a half or so after we got married. Jen got pregnant. We were excited. We always, we wanted to be parents. We wanted to, start a family. And it was like, okay, I got to straighten up. I've got to tighten this up, Lord, help me through this. We're excited about it. I'll quit drinking, just watch over Jen, watch over this baby. Well, we went to the first the first baby doctor appointment and got to see the little peanut heartbeat and everything. And
boy, I thought you were going somewhere else with that one.
But shortly after, she starts having complications, ends up she miscarries, because what I didn't mention is I didn't stop drinking, that lasted a day or two like usual.
Good thought.
She miscarries, and it just tore me apart, it really tore me up, mostly because I didn't keep that promise that I had made. I'm not saying that, that's why it happened, but I didn't hold up my end of the bargain for sure. Yeah. And that was a step that didn't really help, because I didn't pick it up from there, and do better. It was kind of the opposite of that. But like I said, going back and forth, stop for a while, go back. We do end up having our first child in 2009, healthy baby boy. Thank God for that. I'm still going back and forth, still big, still way overweight, which I guess we can come to in here in a bit. But same thing, back and forth with the drinking. When our second son was born, Caleb, in 2011, there was something, I don't remember exactly how it went, but I finally did kind of get a hold of something, got back into church steady. We were doing real good, quit using tobacco, quit drinking. It was a couple years. We did the youth leader stuff at church and all this, and, just working and doing well. And then our third child comes around, and leading up to that, we're missing some church because of the, Jen going to the doctor. She's towards the end of the pregnancy, kind of struggling, and then we have the baby, and then shortly after, I'm trying to stay around to help her out. and I basically just started to slip, missing some church, doing this, doing that, starting to get easier and easier just not to go. And basically, I end up slipping farther, faster in that period of time, 2014-ish, than I ever had before. It just was a fast downward spiral to the worst of my drinking that I'd ever been in. And that went on for several years. And I can go story after story, about the struggles and what I did and just the ignorance. But it got to a point where I knew I needed to change. I knew I didn't want, my mom and dad came one day towards the end of this, and mom's crying, and she said, Aaron, do you even want to change? Aaron, do you even want to get past this? And, it just broke me up. I'm like, yeah, Mom, I want past this. I want away from, I want free from this more than anything. I go to this, I checked into an outpatient rehab deal, trying to get away. I went to the doctor. He gave me some medicine. I'm pouring my heart out to him. He doesn't know what to do. He's like, here, try this medicine. Take it. If you drink on it, you get sick. Like, okay, so this worked for a few weeks. Finally, I'm like, I'm an alcoholic, so let's try out some drinking and see how sick this makes me. It deep down inside, I'm like, I hope this makes me as sick as I've ever been in my life, because here's a tool, to help me get past this. I got like some hives, got a little bit red, but I did not get sick, so it's like bottoms up, I'm back to it. Then the rehab thing came, and go first week, it's okay, whatever. Second week, at each of one of them, you have to, who are you? What's your drug of choice? How long's it been since you last used? And, Aaron, alcohol last night. And the lady, 2 weeks in a row, the night before is my last time using. She goes, that this program requires abstinence. It's like, yeah, lady, I got it. That's why I'm here, because I have trouble with that. And she said, I've got somebody that you need to meet. I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'm down for whatever. I'll give it a shot. So after the meeting, she writes down this name and this number. And I stop at Kroger in Carbondale, where this rehab place is, and buy a 6-pack with a bad check, because I didn't have enough money, but I'm an alcoholic and I got to do what I got to do. So I write a bad check for my 6-pack, and I got to have this to get up the nerve to call this guy. So I call him on the way home. He answers, and while we're talking, he's finishing my sentences. I'm telling him who I am, what I got going on, who told me to call him, and he's finishing my sentences for me. He and I can tell he knows what I'm dealing with. He understands, and I'm just torn apart. I'm crying. It's I appreciate it. I'm nervous. I don't know what to do. I'm suffering. I'm struggling, but really good. He invites me to come to an AA meeting with him the next night or whenever it was, and we hang up. I get home. I'm kind of excited about it. I pour the rest of the beer that I didn't finish from my 6-pack in the sink, and we're going to try this out. Well, per the usual, that lasted a night or two, and I'd never call them back. I don't go to the AA meeting, and pretty much back to business as usual on the drinking for a couple weeks. And during all this, my wife had moved out with the kids, was staying at my brother's house because I was acting a fool. I wasn't violent. I wasn't abusive. But, I'm walking in with my plate full of chicken from the smoker, drunk as can be, trip over the doorway and spill it all over the place, just being stupid. Drove around a few times with the kids in the truck while I was drinking, just stupid stuff. It was every day drinking. And one quick side note that I always appreciated about the whole experience was whenever I'd be driving to DuQuoin to see Jen and the boys, that towards the end there, I would listen to gospel music while I was driving around drinking all the time. I would listen to a lot of music, but I would always go to gospel. And there was a few songs, Take My Hand, Precious Lord, Lead Me On, Let Me Stand, I'm Tired, I'm Weak, I'm Worn, Through the Storm, Through the Night, Lead Me On to the Light, take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. And parts of that song, my spirit would just cry out to God.
Right.
Cry. I mean, I would just bawl driving down the road, looking back on it. I really believe that was the Holy Ghost, making prayers that I couldn't pray for myself at a time when I needed it, more than ever. But I kept battling, kept fighting, it was a losing battle. And one day, it was a Sunday, I'd left my brother's house that morning, bought some booze on the way back home to make my food for the week and get ready to go back to work. And, I'm pretty liquored up by midday, and I'm leaving Aldi's, and I've got a good life. The thought that what came to my mind was, I've got a good life insurance policy that I bought a few years ago. I'm putting my kids through hell, put my wife through hell. She can't even be home. They'll be better off if I'm not here. They'll have that. They'll be okay financially. And people listening that have struggled with this or anything similar, they'll know that was the logical next step. They'll understand my position. But that scared the hell out of me.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Scary,
Not the cuss word hell. But that scared me to death, because I'd never thought like that. I'd never felt like that. And it was a real feeling. That became a real option for me at that point. And I called that guy I'd talked to first time in a few weeks, and he picked up, and I told him I need some, I need some help, told him what was going on. He said, "Can you come over here to Heron or wherever it was? There was a meeting going on." I was like, "No, I've been drinking quite a bit already. I probably better not drive." And he said, "Okay, I'll come to you." Keep in mind, I've never met this guy in real life. This is the second time I've talked to him. And he shows up at my house a little while later and sat with me for several hours. We talked. It was a good experience. And that was June 25th, 2017 on a Sunday. The next morning, I got up for work, and I felt good. I felt light. Didn't feel hungover like most Monday mornings. And I don't remember what I was doing. I was still at Ison. I think I was heading back from the off-site warehouse to the plant, and I was just feeling good. I'm like, "Lord, thank you for this. I feel a change in my life." And that song, the scriptures in Lamentations, and the song "Great is Thy Faithfulness" is written off those scriptures. But I don't have a Bible in front of me, but I can remember the important parts. He's talking about, it's by God's mercy that we've not been consumed. His mercies are new every morning. Great is his faithfulness. And I just thought, "Lord, why have I," and I knew that the feeling, that is that new mercy that I was feeling that morning, and thought, "God, why have I not felt this before? Why have I not felt this feeling, this new mercy?" And it felt like my entire life just flashed before my eyes looking back. And I told you some about my childhood, and I don't know if it was an audible voice. I was by myself in the truck, but it felt like somebody just screaming into the back of my head. He said, "You've never been this desperate before." And it was, just as quick that he healed me. He relieved me of my obsession and compulsion to drink, as much as a blind person getting their sight back, as much as a man or woman getting out of a wheelchair and walking for the first time. God healed me right then and there. And it's been, going on 6 years that I haven't drank. And the biggest thing is, I don't have that obsession and the compulsion to drink like I did have. But, and I want to throw this out there, being sober, getting away from that, is not just not drinking. I don't even know if I would consider that a step, in getting sober and getting away from that. If it is, it's maybe half a step. The true value, the true benefit of sobriety, in the process of recovery, is learning how to live, you know, how to be a better husband, dad, worker, you know, just a better person in general, all the way around in every aspect of life, and really learning how to live. Because, you know, whenever you're in that situation and you're so, you know, just overwhelmed with the substance abuse or whatever, you're not, that's just a, you know, a symptom of a bigger problem. You know, the actual consumption of alcohol or whatever it is it's just a symptom of it. There's something deeper going on. You know, there's other things that you've got to get dealt with and get fixed. So, you know, I'm thankful for my time as an alcoholic. You know, I still call myself an alcoholic, just a recovering alcoholic, but man, I'm thankful for that, because I wouldn't be the person I am without those experiences. You know, I can relate to people that I never would have been able to relate to without those experiences. Like I said, I kind of almost see it as my superpower now, having that personality, because I'm still an addict. I'm still a 300-pound guy, but inside. But I've learned to take that, you know, harness it and use it in a productive way, and to use my testimony hopefully to benefit other people, and, you know, point people toward God. Because none of this stuff I'm doing, none of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight, it's not for me. It's not for my glory. I don't have any desire to, you know, I don't have any aspirations to be, you know, famous or what's the word I'm trying to think of?
Notoriety.
Yeah, notoriety. It's to point people to God. It's to add value to people's lives, because people are struggling so much. You know, there's so much pain, so much struggle out there, and we have to be lights. You know, we have to be available to them and to lift people up. So
thank you for that testimony, and I agree 100%. I don't want to cut you off. I know you got a lot to say, but something we talked about, and Corey and I are just teaching a class there at Marion Apostolic, and in Marion over here, the elements is that growth, and to mimic what he's saying is there's so much to share. We have those experiences. We have those testimonies. That's what makes us overcomers. If we hadn't went through this stuff, we wouldn't have anything to talk about. I wouldn't. If it wasn't for the grace and glory of God, I know what I would be. I know where I would be. I know the mess I would make out of my life. And he offers that freely to us. And that's all we're trying to get out of this podcast. That's all we're trying to get out of the class. That's all we're trying to get out of our lives, is be a living testimony to pay homage of something we didn't deserve, something you can't earn, something that's given freely, the love of God. And I feel that every time I sit down and start talking about the goodness of God, or where he's brought us from. And those Christian songs, one thing that I loved about my grandfather, and not everybody has went through addiction. Not everybody goes through the path of thinking the world's a better place without them, but there's a lot that do. There's a lot that struggle with those things. And if we can reach that one person, if we can reach or speak to the heart of the soul about what the answer is, and it can be a desperation that drives you to that. It can be a hunger that if something you don't know what you're looking for, but we can offer that and share the answer of Christ. And each day you got to grow up. Each day you got to continue to build yourself up spiritually. And that class we're teaching shows us that. That's why Nicodemus said to him, "What should I do to be born again?" You know, I can't be born again yet. But we're going to start as a child, and we're going to grow together through this walk of becoming and putting down the old flesh, putting down the old me. It's a struggle. It's a daily struggle. As Aaron said, I'm still an alcoholic. Well, guess what? I've been sober a long time. Still an alcoholic. There's a reason I have to reflect on those things. One, to be able to speak to it. Two, to be able to know where I've come from. But three, to be able to reach for it. And my grandfather would sing that song, And I loved it. And that's what converted me, not converted me, but touched my soul. And still to this day, I still remember him with his guitar. There's some video of it. I have to share it. But he would sing a song, and he's like, when he reached way down for me. And he would do the actions every time. And he would get down, and he would just act like he's scraping the bottom of the barrel. For us that's been to the bottom of the barrel, and it doesn't have to always be that way, but we feel that in our spirit, feel that in our soul. So thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's some things that's difficult to share. It's not something that you can just come out and say. It's something that the Lord has given him a testimony that is making him an overcomer, and you're doing great things. You're famous in my book.
Well, I can't, what was it? Which one of the apostles? Maybe it was in the Gospels when they said, I can't but speak the things that we've seen and heard. We can't keep our mouths closed. We can't. And God's put that fire in me for a long time, from a young kid, and I didn't know what that looked like. And that's the point of I've been so excited about coming and doing this because I know the platform's not huge, but I want to get it out. Doing the Ruck to Work stuff we'll talk about. It's just, I can't keep my mouth shut about it. I don't want to keep my mouth shut about it. I'm going to explode if I try to.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing for our listeners, because I'm not sure what, I know we're reaching the work that don't go to church. I definitely know that that's something we are reaching, because people come and tell us, oh, hey, I'm listening to all the episodes you put out, and they're not church goers, and I think that's amazing. I know that you asked me about my testimony, which I kind of did on YouTube briefly, but ours is similar. We had like blue-collar parents, raised in church, no alcohol in the house, losing a parent at 14. You'll find some way to fill that void. And I definitely, once I got to college, I went wild. And then once you get good at drinking and who doesn't like keeping to do things you're really good at? And that was my identity. I was a college athlete. I lived in the softball house. I just went buck wild. And then coming back home, I tried not to keep that identity. There was always something in the back of my mind, like, why am I doing this? Like, I have everything that I could ever want. I've achieved it. If I put my heart in something, I know I can do it. I've always had that, and I've had good support group. I've never even been, my mom is a solid rock. I've always had it. There was no, looking back on it now in my 30s, is like, why did I do that? Because now, doing what we're doing now, I still run into the people that knew me then, and they don't, it's like they're weird around you, they're awkward around you. They still want you to be that party person, or we are all people that have either had some type of substance abuse, all of us around this table, but we've all not wanted to be that person. It's not like we wanted that for us.
I don't know that anybody truly does.
Yeah, but
that.
You just get
You're looking for something.
Like just something, and then it's dependent on where you get in that valley and that rut. You just cannot get out. That
and and one of the things I want to make sure and tack on to my testimony is in recovery, learning that, so much of so many resentments that I harbored, so many, I blamed so much on other people. Everything was somebody else's fault, learning that I had so much control over, learning to let go of those resentments, apologizing to people for ways that I had harmed them, and taking responsibility, taking ownership for all these things, and realizing just how selfish it all is, and not owning my own problems, not taking responsibility for those things. I really think that's the root of most of those, most of the substance abuse problems, is just selfishness, seeking what's going to fill the gap for me, what's going to fill the void for me, running from some sort of responsibility or, problem that I had in the past.
Did you ever find that you did it just because you were bored? Like everything else was fine, so like just in boredom of fulfillment? Or did you always have a goal? Like, I'm going to just numb it all out. Like, was that always a goal?
At first, when I first started drinking, it was, I liked the feeling, I had started hanging out with some older guys, kind of trying to fit in with the crowd somewhat. It didn't take very long at all to where it became I had to get that feeling back. The addiction aspect of it set in really, really fast and really, really early. And it got to where it wasn't boredom. It wasn't, it was like I couldn't stop. Like I could not do it.
It was part of you.
I couldn't get past the liquor store. I would find a way, to get it no matter what. And I would work it into whatever I was doing. I was coaching baseball one time, like T-ball, and I'd drink all the time. I found a way I drank at work one time. So I stayed away from that. But any other task or anything else that I did in life, I would work the alcohol into it. And it wasn't like towards the end especially, I didn't feel like it was even a conscious decision. It was just had to happen. And I didn't have any control over whether I did it or not, is how it felt.
Well, thanks for sharing your testimony with us, Biff. I think at this time we'll take a little bit of break and get into our next subject. So this again, absent with our Lord, and we're going to continue. That's a testimony, and we're going to hear how we're made overcomers, and hopefully some of the activity to help each other and spread the good news of God and get that word out for those that have those struggles. And you'll find there's a lot of us that struggle, and it's a day-to-day fight, and it's a day-to-day battle. And that does take some accountability, some ownership, some discipline. But just like everything in life, you're not always going to be successful your first run at it. So don't give up. Stick around with us. We'll learn a little bit more. God bless.
Thanks, guys.